You're watching AZ Sports with Matt and Rich. Hello, everybody, and welcome back to episode 6 of AZ Sports with Matt and Rich. I'm your host, Rich. This is my co-host, Matt. On today's news, we have quite a bit of information to be thrown out there. We've got a lot of pigskin news with the football, indoor and outdoor. The Phoenix Suns advanced to the second round. Took longer than 4, but it's acceptable. For the D-backs, we have a lot of news having to do with the mound and how well it has been doing this year. And then finally, in the end of this episode, we'll give a little bit of our thoughts about the Coyotes in their final game at Gila River Arena. Spoiler, we ended up going, so it was quite an exciting tidbit. And all that will be coming up on today's episode. But first, I want to remind you guys that if you could, please give us a like, a follow, a subscription. Anything at this point really helps. We would really appreciate it. Anyways, let's hop right into it with our first topic today, which is going to be that the Cardinals pick up Hollywood Brown for their 23rd pick in the NFL, the 2022 NFL Draft.
Yep, they picked up Marquise Brown and also that 100th overall pick, the third round pick. I only really have one negative thing to say about this, and that I feel like they overpaid. Obviously, I'm going to look at A.J. Brown, who's a phenomenal wide receiver. I'm like, oh, why didn't you go get him? The problem with that, cap space, I understand why. You still have D-Hop. I get that, all right? I don't like the return, because Marquise Brown is a very good wide receiver, is a good wide receiver too. I just feel like you overpaid for him, but 1,000 yards, probably going to fit just well in with the system. He's a very good friend of Kyler Murray's, or reuniting them. I think it was 2 years they played together in Oklahoma. Correct me if I'm wrong on that. I always get all those states down there confused, but I do like the receiver, and the only real issue that I notice or I've been informed of is that he tends to drop passes in the end zone. That can be worked on, that can be fixed, and I can always use a 1,000-yard receiver. I'm really more interested in kind of what Baltimore got there and how it ended up addressing one of the Cardinals' needs. You have that for me?
So I actually don't know what Baltimore got, because I believe they traded the pick away to the Bills. So Baltimore ended up, I didn't actually look at what Baltimore got, but the Bills ended up getting Kaiir Elam. I hope I'm saying that right. Kaiir Elam. But yeah, so very interesting. That pick swapped hands a couple of times. And
I find it weird that the Cardinals just traded out of the first round, but the team we traded with used that pick as an asset to trade up. And look, I don't trust Steve Keim drafting at all. He's normally, if you're going to see a better pick from Keim, I think it's like the 3rd to 5th round or something like that when I was looking at it. But I get it. Get out of there, avoid the situation, get a proven receiver, but I kind of feel they could have just done more with it. I don't like the asset management. That's it. That is the only concern I have with it, and it just kind of gets annoying. But they did at least do something with that second round pick that they ended up getting. So their first pick in the draft, I need to talk about this, was a tight end. This Cardinals football team that doesn't have Zach Ertz or Max Williams. It doesn't already have two very good tight ends. The only thing I can really think of that this move would make any sense at all. It's Trey McBride. He was pretty much one of the top-rated tight ends going into the draft. The only way this makes sense to me is if they're planning on running 2 tight ends every single play or most plays, getting more rundowns, getting more blocks, and just, you know what, wide receiver, not our best position. Let's just get an extra tight end there. That's the only way that makes sense, and to me, it's a really, really weird pickup. I get you're supposed to go best player available, but with the amount of holes on this roster, if you picked him up just to move him or just to try to, oh, hey, we can move him later, okay, but what are you going to do with him now? And if you don't play him because he doesn't get a whole lot of time because there's no space for him, his trade value goes down. I try to justify the move. I can't. It's weird. Yeah. Good player. Nothing wrong with the player. Why did we pick him? That's my big concern there. And then to kind of bring it all full circle, just to not make the Cardinals stuff take too long, with that 100th overall pick, the third round that they got in this trade, they get a defensive end, Myjai Sanders. At the very least, it does address a need. Got nothing negative to say on that. I'm kind of baffled. This is going to be one of the weirdest drafts to look at for me because they still had a lot of holes everywhere on the roster.
So the you didn't hear it, but on the other end, they just heard a little tidbit while you were talking. That was an oopsies on my part, but I just was curious. I wanted to look up the trade. So what had happened was that the Ravens ended up moving back. So they took that the 23rd pick, moved back to 25th, and then picked up a 130th pick. And of course, with with NFL.com, everything that you click on auto starts a video with audio. So there was like a fraction of a second there where something was talking. That was my bad. I just wanted to pull up that little bit of information about that pick and why it got moved to the Bills. But
right now, oh, sorry, go ahead.
I was gonna say, but I agree with what you're saying. It's a little bit of a head scratcher for me. I guess they're trying to maybe appease Kyler Murray and make sure that he's happy. I guess.
I just don't get the extra tight end. Like, I don't know. In some happy news, though. All right, April 26, 2022. Full disclosure, I'm going to do a shameless plug. I did a video on it on my AZ Sports Guy channel. But the entire valley, for the first time, what feels like forever, dubs all around. So the Diamondbacks hosting the Dodgers. They were actually down 3-0, make the full comeback 5-3 with a win. I want to say in that one, Freight Train had a 2-run shot. Really good to see how he's playing surprisingly decently to start the season. And the Suns, in Game 5, beating the Pelicans by 15. Mikal Bridges going off for it was like 31 points. Ridiculous. It actually ended up being essentially kind of stomping on the neck of the Pelicans. They get the job done in Game 6. And then the Coyotes, what is it with comebacks in the Valley? But anyway, they actually beat the Wild 5-3 in just a victory night for the Valley. I absolutely love reporting on stuff like that because, well, not to be too cynical, we are Arizona sports. We don't get multiple victories very often on the same night.
And how ironic about that game that you're talking about, that game against the Wild. I believe Jack McBain gets his first goal. He was drafted to the Wild. A little bit of a middle finger to them, saying, "Hey, I will play in Arizona."
All I know is that it made up for the Kevin Ball first career goal against the Coyotes. We need more of our guys scoring our first career against their former teams and a little less, hey guys, we traded away, even if they're not that good, saving their first career goal for against the Coyotes. But speaking of other good news, the Arizona Rattlers, they played Frisco. Unfortunately, I didn't get to watch very much. I was hanging out with some family, but I turned the game on for a little bit. Come on. I have to ditch my family a little bit to watch some Rattlers. And they ended up beating the Frisco Fighters, who also, side note, not a bad team. They're 5-1 going into that one. It was actually a pretty competitive game. 49-35. It didn't start out competitive, though. The Rattlers started off with 3 consecutive touchdowns in the first quarter, 21-0. They outscored them. Frisco outscores the Rattlers 21-9 in the second. And then it just kind of goes back and forth towards the very end, where the Rattlers edge them out 13-8 in the fourth with a final of 49-35. The only real concerns, there was a late, I think a second quarter or third quarter interception by Drew Powell. Frisco gets a touchdown, almost immediate turnover, and then Frisco gets another really good possession. And what really sucked about that, so a couple plays before that, Jamal Miles, former ASU legend, former ASU kid, gets a touchdown on a kickoff return, and then he has another kickoff return touchdown, but because of an illegal block in the back, it gets taken back, and then they end up turning the ball over. So it was a little sloppy, but then again, like I said, Frisco, not a bad team. Former Arizona Rattlers quarterback TJ Edwards, as our backup last year, actually came in, played pretty decently, 7 for 13, 72 yards, and no touchdowns, but he was actually generating some offense. No passing touchdowns, I should say. He had 2 rushing touchdowns, but Drew Powell, just to give you some numbers for the end of the night, 13 for 12, 168 yards, 5 touchdowns, 4 picks. Not a very great night for Drew Powell. He didn't really have that many yards on the ground either. Shannon Brooks had a rushing touchdown. Jamal Miles, Braxton Ailey each had receiving touchdowns, and Troy Pelletier had a couple himself. not a bad game. Definitely played up against a better opponent. Well, not played up. They played against a much better opponent than they were used to playing throughout the season. They did get the win out. They did, get the victory, but a couple bad passes, a couple bad penalties. It could have been a bigger victory and just some things to clean up. Obviously, like I said, they're used to playing against not as good teams to start the year, so I wasn't exactly surprised that it was a little closer of a matchup.
All right. Well, let's just continue on into the good news department here. And that would be that the Suns are moving on to the second round. They are 12 wins away from winning it. So they're closer and closer by the week as we record these episodes. So I'm sure you have a lot to talk about, but just to bring it up, because I'm not too sure if we brought it up in the previous week, Devin Booker went down with a leg injury. I believe it was some sort of sprain.
Yeah, it's a grade 1 hamstring sprain. It typically takes 2 to 3 weeks to heal. Booker is that dude is too competitive. He's like, no, I'm not. I'm not gonna just take 2 to 3 weeks. I'm back.
Yeah. And on top of that, they ended up closing out in Game 6 and had a monstrous performance from. I'm relabeling him as the closer, but his universal nickname of CP3, Chris Paul. I don't know why I wanted to say a different first name.
Cliff Paul.
What do you got? What do you got about Game 6 here?
All right, so Game 6, he's also known as the point god. Anyway, so no one really noticed until the second half that it was getting serious, but in the first half he was 6 for 6 from the field. He ends up going a perfect 14 for 14. He breaks some sort of playoff record. It was a little inconsistent because they kept updating it throughout the game, but when he was around 12 for 12, that was the first time it happened in the playoffs since like 1997. Goes off for 33 points, 8 assists, 5 rebounds, 100% from the field. Literally one of the best point guards of all time. We can all just acknowledge that. And they beat the Pelicans in Game 6 on the Pelicans' home floor after a lot of their fans were getting really arrogant there for a little bit because they managed to win a couple of games. Both of them, Devin Booker didn't play or got injured in.
Yeah, not only was Devin Booker MIA, but then I believe you tweeted out something about how they had an egregious stat about fouls or something like that. Where they had like an insane number of fouls go their way.
Okay, so this is a conspiracy, quote unquote. There's my disclosure. I do believe in that. But all three of the teams in the series that could have gone 3-1 going into that Game 5, Game 5. Game 4, sorry. Why can't I talk today? Going into that Game 4, all the series that could have gone 3-1, every single one of them were tied up, and there is a 20-plus free throw disparity for the team that was down 2-1 heading into it. The NBA has been caught fixing games. I am not calling that a fixed game. All right, the Phoenix Suns did not play their best basketball until around Game 5. Let's acknowledge that, let's talk about that, so that way it's not acting like that's the reason why we lost. No, but when the Basketball Association has been caught doing crap like this repeatedly, there's too many coincidences. All three of those series that share that all went to the extra game. They all got tied up. Yeah, no, that was a little sus.
Awfully strange. That is for sure.
And then on top of that, can we just talk about how New Orleans should probably have a hockey team with just how the Pelicans were just flagrant fouling left and right. It was a Game 3. Jay Crowder gets just checked to the floor. It was a solid body check, all right? But we're not playing hockey. We're playing basketball.
Put those guys on ice skates. They'd be great. Fourth line plugs.
Was it Game 4? Herb Jones just throws Chris Paul to the floor. Yes, Chris Paul ends up kicking that one. I forget his name. Jose Alvarado ends up kicking him in the nuts in Game 6. I think that was well worth it. But that's just because Jose Alvarado is a pest. But it was mostly New Orleans just like body checking left and right. Can we just start a campaign? Look, I don't like Houston. If Ottawa moves, can we get him in New Orleans? Can we just see if that market can support a hockey team? Because their basketball team sure plays like a hockey team.
That is for sure. Anything else that you want to finish up on with the Suns, or are we rolling today?
You know what? My gut says Suns in 6 for the Mavs, but because my brother-in-law has some confidence, I'm gonna pretend that I'm the smart one. I'm gonna pretend this is my take. Suns in 5. Let's move on.
All right. We're going to move on to, even though the D-backs have been kind of mediocre so far, I think they were, last time I checked, 10 and 12. There has been one bright spot on this team, and that has been the mound. Gallen and Kelly have been doing quite well. I know you had some stats that you wanted to throw at us, so lay it on to us.
All right, so Merrill Kelly, first off, I think he also went to ASU, another Arizona kid. I don't think he was born here, but he went to high school and college here. But he actually had the lowest ERA by a D-backs pitcher through 3 starts. I love this little graphic. He had a .59. All right, that would
Is that
be,
good? Is that good?
Yes, very good. Very good.
Is that good? I think that's good.
It is so ridiculous. It is so it's borderline video game numbers. When I play the show, I have no problem admitting I play it on rookie because I just want to blow out people. I'm not into like the technicals of baseball. Those are the ERAs I'm posting on rookie. This guy is just playing insane. It wasn't Randy Johnson. It wasn't Kurt Schilling. It wasn't Brandon Webb. I want to say 2 of those guys won Cy Youngs with the D-backs, being Webb and Johnson. No, none of those had the lowest. It was Merrill Kelly. So I just want to point out, I've been simping for this dude for years, and he's definitely not disappointing. He also, through 5 starts, has a 1.27 ERA, and that's lower than his career best in 5-start span, which is back between August and September of 2019 of 1.74. So let's call it what it is. Merrill Kelly's been dominating, and not just him.
Yep.
Zach Gallen, the ace himself. And me and my brother-in-law have been hyping this dude up for a couple of years. Had some injuries, had some problems. You had the shortened off season, the shortened off season. No real training camp for the 2020 season, leading to a lot of pitching injuries. But Zach Gallen really looking good right now. In his last start, 6 innings pitched, only 2 hits, a couple of walks, and 5 strikeouts. It's good to see the ace pitching as well as he has been. And then in Merrill Kelly's last start, I want to say it was yesterday, 7 innings, 2 hits, and 4 strikeouts. Also pitching very well. I don't like the people that are trying to point out, the D-backs going into it have like one of the lowest strikeout percentages. If you are a contact pitcher and you're getting guys to ground out or fly out consistently, I don't care about raw strikeouts. Obviously, raw strikeouts are nice, but if you could end an at-bat in 2 to 3 pitches, because you're getting some contact as opposed to 4, 5, 6 because you're trying to strike them out, couple fouls, couple balls, I'll take that because then your pitcher is going deeper into games.
Yep, less wear. More pitches, yep.
But one story that hasn't exactly aged well so far has been Katel Martinez off to a very slow start. So far through the first 20 games of the season, he's batting .146. But fortunately, in one of the last wins they had, I want to say it was against the St. Louis Cardinals, he knocked in his first home run of the season. So it's good to see him starting to wake up a little bit offensively. And the D-backs, I'm happy to report, not only did they win their first series of the season, I want to say that one was against the Dodgers. They might have won a little bit earlier, but they won that one against the Dodgers. So far, they have split against the Cardinals, and they're actually playing pretty well against one of the best teams. Actually, excuse me, they've won 2 of the 3 against the Cardinals. It's a 4-game set, not a 3-game set. I apologize. And they've won 3 of the last 4 games. So the D-backs are turning it around. The record's 10 and 12 going into this game. I think the first pitch is in a couple of hours. So it hasn't started yet, but look, going into this, I was saying that they weren't going to be that bad. I did not see them being as bad as they were last year. I was surprised with how bad they were last year. I don't want to hear about sure, there was injuries, there was whatever. The bullpen wasn't very good. The hitting wasn't as consistent. The pitching would pitch dominant. The hitters couldn't hit. The hitters would throw up 5 runs. The pitchers would give up 6, 7, 8. So it's just a lot of inconsistency, a lot of bad play. This year, it's starting to even out, starting to get better. We're still early, but if this keeps up, this team's going to be competing for a wild card spot, especially with that expanded playoffs. And if you're a Diamondbacks fan, I know there's a lot of cynicism going into it. I understand it. I'm not going to begrudge you if you were cynical going into the year. I still had my stupid, hopeless optimism because I'm a Coyotes fan. How would I survive if I didn't just be hopelessly optimistic all the time? But I think things are going to start turning around, and this team is not going to be as bad as they were last year. I will stand by that.
I agree. I think that things are looking a little bit better. They are still in a difficult division.
Yeah.
I don't know what you'd call it. Yeah, division.
The NL West.
I feel like every sport has a different name for them, so I always mess it up. Yeah. But they're in a difficult division, and hopefully they can kind of keep rolling, keep it going, stay consistent. That's the most important thing. They need to keep that consistency going. Speaking of rolling, the Coyotes rolling out of Glendale after their final game at Gila River Arena.
Exclusive
Yes,
club.
yes,
Exclusive club.
the exclusive club. I don't know if my auto blur will automatically blur it, but for those listening to the podcast via audio, we just held up our final game tickets at Glendale. I don't know how many they gave out of these, maybe like 5,000 or so.
Yeah, they said it was the first 5,000, and I was running a little late. Lucky for me, Richie came in clutch and gave me his. I almost said no, but I'm a very selfish person, so of course I accepted, and then he had a second one anyway. But still,
Yeah.
Richie, number one, he's over here coming in clutch, because I would have probably been an idiot and just bought it on eBay later. If I
Yeah,
couldn't
look.
grab one.
Lucky enough, my wife was with me, so she doesn't really collect merch or memorabilia or anything like that. So she was perfectly fine with like handing one of them away, and so that's what we did. Gave it to Matt, and now we're a part of the final ticket club, I guess, in what was quite an exciting game. You know, since you decided to go in a little heater at the very end and screw yourself over of the 32nd pick, I guess you might as well win it in front of the fans before ending the season. And they did it in quite a dramatic fashion, shall I say, with going down 4 goals in the first 8 minutes of the game and clawing all the way back to win it 5-4. I think that final goal was scored maybe 10 minutes left in the third period.
I want to bring up the stat sheet for last night or the other night, because wow, that was, it was just it was kind of stupid. I don't say that like with any hatred or any nothing. It was stupid. So I want this beforehand. I bet $1 that they would win, and I bet $1 that they would win in regulation. Richie was right there. We were recording our segment after the first period. They were down 4-1. I called it. Did I not say? It was sarcastic, but did I not say they were going to score 5 goals and they were still going to win?
Yes, you did. And then I even made the joke that everything happens in the third period with this team. And guess what? Everything happens in the third period. Actually, no, their second period was quite well, but they still scored 2 in the third.
I had $10 left in FanDuel credit or whatever. In online gambling credit. I shouldn't be dropping names. We're not sponsored. They don't get free
Not sponsored, but can be.
Subscribers. But I had $10 left, and I made the joke. I should have just said Coyotes score 5 goals, because that payout would have been stupid. Instead, I bet that the Florida Panthers are going to win the Stanley Cup, because I still stand by that. But they're down 4-0, and I'm like, dude, right where they want them, right where we want them. Well, 3 goals in the first 3 minutes, I should say, but yeah, first 7 minutes they're down by 4, right where we want them, because we get the comeback. Gostisbehere is 13th from Galchenyuk. This play was stupid. This play, I think it also got distributed 3 different times or 2 different times, because O'Brien originally had the goal. So he shoots it from the point. It goes off of a defender. I think it deflects off of another defender, or it just kind of goes over a stick. Off the pipe, off the goalie's buttocks, into the goal. And Ingram, poor kid, he had no chance. Poor kid had no chance. Then in the second period, you had Travis Boyd from Capabianco. It's good to see him getting some points late in the season. Then Jack McBain, when he scored this to make it 4-3, what happens when Jack McBain scores, Richard?
Winning happens.
Winning happens, and also so far we've scored 5 goals a game whenever Jack McBain scored, because he scored against Minnesota his first career, and they actually won that 5-3. So it's all coming together. On the Carcone goal, I was hanging out with a buddy of mine I've known since we were in middle school. We met when I was in 8th grade, he was in 6th grade. Went to all the games we possibly could together. His parents were season ticket holders. I was a season ticket holder. I'm yelling, I'm screaming, give it to Carcone. Just after the power play expires, he scores, we're tied, and then Gostisbehere with just under 10 minutes to go in that frame ends up getting the game winner in one of the most ridiculous games I've seen in a long time. And I'm like, dude, going into this game, I'll full disclosure, you can make fun of me if you want. I was almost in tears. Like, just the opening ceremony, really just trying to take everything in. Then you go up 3 goals in the first 3 minutes. You're pretty sober after that. You know, you're really not feeling the feels anymore. You're just like, oh, hey, this is where we're at. And then the comeback, seeing the fans getting into it, just getting a lot of the arena shots. I spent most of the game, second and a lot of the third period, walking around kind of the last time I'm going to be able to, getting as much footage as I could of the crowd and kind of how energetic it was. And, man, it's...
Yeah, it was emotional.
It's a disgusting feeling. It's a disgusting feeling that building's never going to be used for hockey again because my dad used to work there. I grew up in that building. It was my first job was as a parking lot attendant there. I went back a few years later as a guest service rep when I just needed money, and it's like I feel like so much of my life was tied to that building, and it hit me. Then it didn't. Then it did. Then it didn't. That like it's over. It's done. And I'm like, man, this feels almost as bad as like if the Coyotes are relocating after this. Like that's kind of how much it hurts right now thinking about it.
Yeah. Yeah, I was gonna say, as you said, it will be vacant of the Coyotes. Well, I also think that it might be vacant in general if the Coyotes end up getting their new arena built. Because why the heck would anybody want to host a concert at Gila River when a new place in Tempe, the new fancy one, could be much, much closer to the airport? So that'll be
let's be honest here. Let's just trash talk Glendale for a second. Gila River Arena is only they only get concerts because they're the sloppy seconds of the Footprint Center. Because the Footprint Center has real teams playing there, like the Rattlers and the Suns. Footprint Center gets real concerts first, and anyone else, like if it's double booked or whatever, okay, well let's go to Glendale. Now they're going to be going to Tempe. If that building gets built, that's where they're going. And I swear that building is going to be so busy because they're going to have ASU basketball, allegedly, if that deal does officially go through. But the fact that ASU is that interested, I can tell you right now, I'm going to shoot my shot. If the team ends up relocating, I'll cry on camera. I don't care. The deal is as good as done, minus the vote actually physically taking place, because ASU runs everything. I will say it again. I'll say it again and again. ASU runs Tempe. If you want something done, get in the good graces of ASU. So it's going to be just a lot of fun, really busy, and hopefully, if everything goes good with the personal life, I might even be moving closer to that area anyway, which would be ironic because I'm always like, oh, I'm a West Valley kid. I'm going to hate when the Coyotes leave, but if I'm closer over there, it's going to make the season tickets for the Rattlers even easier, which I already have. It's going to make getting partial season tickets for the Coyotes easier because I gotta waste money on jerseys and comics. I can't just spend money on tickets. Come on now.
Yep, of course. Well, that's exciting news for yourself. Welcome to the East Valley side, or the East Valley crew. I think the number that I read was that the population is 2-1 East side. Mm-hmm. Like just showing how much larger the East side is versus the West side. I think the population is 2-1. So that's crazy.
If it's any context, that's why I love the West Valley, because it feels a little more I'm just gonna say Wild West in the context of it's a little more open, it's a little more like open space, and I kind of like that. But with more people moving from California over the last couple of years, the West Valley has been expanding so much to the point where in an alternate universe where the Coyotes didn't end up having that little spat with Glendale, that arena theoretically in 5 years could be just as viable as a Tempe one right now because of how much that population is growing. That's a theoretical thing because most of the money is still in the East Valley, but with how much the West Valley is expanding now, it's basically the greater Phoenix area is essentially going to start stretching from like Tempe, Chandler to Buckeye in the next couple of years because of how big we are getting. So it's kind of ridiculous.
Yeah, it's booming crazy. The only thing I'll say is that the hard part will be trying to get those fans on the west side into hockey because a lot of West Siders are more into football. So that is the hard part. There's a reason why the Cardinals have never had problems selling or drawing games because Glendale is very passionate about football, and that is for sure.
I mean, even if anything, like the basic thing is a lot of people. Like, surprisingly, a lot of the people I know that are season ticket holders of the Cardinals live in the West Valley. Just to kind of further try to add some anecdotal evidence to your point, but even then, it's 8 trips a year, and it's normally on a Sunday. Most people, even if the team sucks, are willing to do that. They're not willing to go because it's all 8 trips. Normally, the traffic's a little lighter if you go earlier, but still, you know what to expect with that traffic. You don't want to do that 41 times if your team sucks, because let's say it just cost you $20 in gas for the trip there and back for a regular football game. Just
right now, easily.
Out there. Just throwing a random number out there. You're doing that 8 times. The quick math, I'm not very good at it with my head, but that's like 1,600 if I'm not stupid. Imagine that, but times 41. I completely understand why a lot of East Side folks don't want to drive all the way out here for a team that isn't good. If the team was mediocre, it'd be a little more justifiable, but no. And even then, they still had 11,000 on average, a little more. Actually, it was almost 12,000 by the end of the season. They actually didn't do bad with attendance in considering the state we're in, and considering a lot of people, same thing like you were talking about in the last episode with 2010, if people are like, oh, they're going to move anyway, right now it's from Glendale to the East Valley, but back then it was potentially leaving the state. What's the point? Why do we care? Whatever. So you just have the hardcores, and then the people that wanted cheap tickets, like the St. Louis fans that completely invaded on the 26th, the game that Mason and I went to. That was, I think that's part of the reason why I had to impulse buy the tickets for the last game. I couldn't let that be my last memory of Gila. I couldn't let the visiting team invading like a Cardinals game be my last memory of Gila River Arena. Yeah,
there's a lot there, that's for sure. But you know what? In our little 5,000 rinky-dink arena that everybody wants to insult, there'll be a whole lot less. Calling it now. I'm calling it now. There's going to be a whole lot less. I think this barn's going to be a lot louder than expected. I don't think people realize that. Yes, less bodies in the arena means that the noise will be harder to get up to the higher decibels. But I'm going to make the argument that, guess what? When you play in a half-filled arena, everybody gets very idle. They get very passive because they know that there's not a lot of people there. When the building looks full, you're going to have more people who are going to be inclined to, shout, cheer, chant, whatever. Perfect example, that was the very last game of the season where I believe the final attendance was 15,000 for that game. The arena holds 17 or 18,000, so pretty close to full. And it was a loud game. And I think it was an emotional game for a lot of people. And you could hear the crowd slowly starting to get back into it with each goal. It was really emotional. I'll say that. Even Jeremy Roenick, who was there, was crying a little bit. I saw he was tearing up.
Man. So I just wanted to interject this because I feel like, not on purpose, I feel like you always forget this. You're also forgetting that they're keeping the student section, and you give some drunk college kids cheap tickets to they will, it doesn't even matter if it's hockey, lacrosse, soccer, whatever, they will scream because they just like getting drunk and yelling at things. So if you when I went to my first ASU game, the football game, this season they just ended, I've been to a couple Cardinals games. I've been to different events. It was a different environment entirely. It was like high school on crack, and it was just like so much energy. Imagine that. But you're packing all that in to only 5,000 seats. That place will be rocking. I will say this, just to acknowledge valid criticism. That building does need to be filled every night. There is no excuse that the 11K demand of a market cannot fill 5K supplies, actually under 5K. So if they don't, I don't see it. We talked at length. I don't want to exhaust you guys anymore. I don't see it. I don't even think it's like a 5% chance. But they do need to fill it up every single night because it will be unacceptable at that point if they can't sell out, 4,800, 5,000 seats. I will acknowledge that because that is a very valid criticism I've heard, but I still think it will be full. I will be shocked, honestly, shocked if they can't sell out even one game there.
Yeah, I'd be surprised. And also remember the ticket pricing, because I don't know, I'm pretty sure we talked about ticket pricing last week. The ticket pricing is going to go down the closer you get to the games, like it always does. It always does. The very beginning, before the seasons, we don't even know the schedule for next season. of course the pricing is going to be at the highest point. You know, that's how you do it. You start high and then you work your way back, just like how. You ready for this transition? Just like how GMBA is going to start high with Chychrun and slowly work his way back to get him traded in the offseason. As we heard in his final game interview, Chychrun kind of sounds like he might be done with the team and he's ready for a trade as well.
Do you want me to read off quotes from it, or do you want to just like summarize it?
Yes, give me just a moment to close my thoughts here.
All right.
He didn't directly insult the team or anything like that. So before anybody like tries to go after him, he didn't. He still likes the market here. He even said that he loved playing all 6 seasons here. But as you're going to hear from these quotes with Matt, it sounds like he is preparing for a trade in the offseason, and it would not surprise me. If you can, take it away.
I borderline want to start with kind of the most damning quote now that you just set me up perfectly, but I also kind of want to ease into it. But let's start off with that. Chychrun on if he'd be okay not being traded this season. This was literally every other thing. If you know anything about like corporate politics, or if you know anything about, I'm going to refer to it as being politically correct, but in the context of a professional athlete, because you can't say like Jonathan Tavares when he was talking about wanting to stay an Islander. He's not going to say, yeah, this market's trash, F these guys. Like, you don't want to be labeled a locker room cancer. You just go out there, you're like, yeah, I do love it here. You focus on positives, and you be ambiguous. So when I refer to politically correct, that is what I am talking about. Right there, the quotes that I'm going to read after, it's pretty much that. But if you know anything about that, you know what he's saying between the lines. This, you can't even deny. So, quote, I don't know. I'm signed for 3 more years. The trajectory of where this team is going, and a lot of stuff that is important to me. I want to be in a position where I'm getting ready to play a week from now, and not packing up. There is no counter argument, right, to be like, oh, he means this. No, what he's saying, and he's not saying it in a F Arizona way. He's saying it as, I want to play in the playoffs, and this team. I genuinely, there's a lot to be excited for this team next year. I think if things click, same thing as this year, they can make a run at a wild card spot. It wouldn't be the first one, it'd be the second one, and it'd be by like 1 point. That's if things click. There's no guarantee there. I don't think he's looking at that and saying, yeah, a long shot at the worst playoff spot is where I want to be. That's not at all. And if you look at the rest of these quotes, he's like, on his future here, quote, a lot of it is out of my control. There's stuff that's going to work itself out in the summer. My mentality, my preparation isn't going to change. I want to win more than anybody. Everyone says that, but I truly believe it. I've been here my whole career and absolutely love it here. Like Richie was saying, he loves it here. He's not trashing the organization. But right here, it seems like every time we get to a point where we're going to be there, it just gets torn down again. Because we talked about it briefly last week. Even though I was excited when we got Hall, I was excited when we got Kessel, when you have the benefit of hindsight, be it with the coaching, be it with the overall roster construction, they went all in too quickly. And I have no problem admitting that. I have no problem admitting my excitement was a little wrong. I wanted success for that team so bad. And when you read that, there is no counter argument. There genuinely isn't, because it seems like every time they're getting it together, when they had their last worst start, the one they tied this season, and then Antti Ranta led that phenomenal second half, it looked like, okay, they're going to push for the playoffs. Then injury-riddled season, bad decisions here or there, kind of trying to, in my opinion, get in the way of rookies' success because, Michael Bunting and Lane Peterson, I think it was Lane Peterson that year, were stuck on the 4th line with very limited minutes, and Bunting still managed to score on that 4th line in those limited minutes. Same thing with Stromer. I think it's just kind of, you're trying to hold back rookies. I think it could have been a lot better. Not going to say Cup champion, but I think they would have been better and had a better odds at playoffs those years. Every time, it looks like it gets torn down. Then this year, when they had the skeleton I was saying it going into the year, they didn't need to tear it down. They didn't need to rebuild. They could have got some free agents and made this a competitive season. The problem was the cap, and they didn't really envision that core going far. They're like, this core is probably a second-round exit at max, and they're like, you know what? Let's tear it down, get a new vision in. And I completely understand why Jakob Chychrun would be opposed to that, because he has given his heart and soul. Like, yeah,
Yep.
There are the concerns, and I brought it up. And everyone that actually watches like my videos or knows, like listens to what I say, I've never hated Chychrun. I've criticized him for a couple of small things, and he has injury issues, but it's never been about Chychrun's a bad player. He's bad for the team. I've been referring to him as the captain for the last 2 or 3 years because I genuinely feel he could lead this team. But if he's at the point where he wants to compete now, and we are still realistically 2 to 3 years away from that, I have no problem with him wanting out. I just wish he wouldn't have said it because now his value is going to go down even more than it because of the disappointing season when he got it together, getting re-injured, so he's injured twice. His maximum games played, I think, I said 63. I had it in front of me last time.
I think it was the shortened season. His peak season where he had, honestly, a season that was worth at least a consideration for the Norris. Not obviously, he shouldn't have walked away with it, but at least get some consideration for it. Mm-hmm. It was that season that he remained healthy, and it was a shortened season due to pre-existing lockdown things.
So if you consider that, it's like, I've pointed those out because we have a history of idolizing mediocrity in this market. It's okay. We can admit it. We understand this, but Chychrun's not mediocre. He just has injury issues, and I think a breakup is mutually beneficial. I wish they would have done it in the offseason. Like I said, allegedly, if Lundell was ever on the table, I think that should have been a no-brainer, which also tells me he probably never was because that would have been a no-brainer.
You mean the deadline, right?
Well, I was talking about going into the season because I thought he would have had more value in the...
Okay, gotcha. Yeah. I was confused here because we're going into the offseason now, so the previous offseason.
I think at the draft it happens, and I think he went from 2 first and probably a top prospect and a good prospect to a first and maybe a top prospect. It depends on who you're trading with, if you can generate some demand, because now that he's put this out, his value's down now. But give it another couple of months, that could start a little bidding war behind the scenes, and that could start some good conversation and get it back up. But as of right now, I see a first and a good prospect. It could be as high as a first, a good prospect, and maybe even a top prospect when we hit draft day. It really depends on if there is that bidding war or not.
Yep. Yeah, and I've been keeping this mentally in my head. When you were talking about potentially competing for a wild card spot, I know a lot of people look at you like, what are you, high? You know, this team was second to last. Well, remember, this team was second to last, and in the final season, they were beating teams that desperately needed points. The Minnesota Wild needed those points to get home ice advantage. The Dallas Stars needed those points so that they didn't have to play... so that they would secure their spot in the playoffs. And also the final game of the season with Nashville, they desperately needed those points because they wanted to play Calgary instead of the Avalanche. All these teams were playing for something, and they lost to the Coyotes. And on top of that, the Coyotes also only had like a very small amount of NHLers left from when they started at the opening night roster. A lot of this team was AHL guys or college guys. Like, a lot of them. I think there was like 8 or 9 Roadrunners in the lineup, and obviously the 2 college acquisitions at the deadline were also in the lineup. Like, this team was very young, and they were still beating teams that are needing points going into the playoffs. And that tells you a lot about how this coaching staff is... they can treat players right and get them to work at their fullmost. I don't know what the word would be. They're firing on all cylinders. Yeah, firing on all cylinders.
All cylinders. Great things to say. Honestly, little thought experiment. How do you think things would have gone? Let's say the exact context of Peter Mueller coming into the league, but he got drafted under Andre Tournier and not under Wayne Gretzky. Do you think things would have been a lot better? Do you think we would have had that franchise center, or he still peaks out as a fringe second liner that quickly fell out?
I'll say this. Andre Tournier wasn't betting on the Coyotes games, so yes. I would say that having a coach more focused on winning instead of filling their pockets with money definitely would help.
And let's just talk real quickly about my mindset going into the year. I didn't think that they were a deadlock for last place in the Central. Didn't say they wouldn't finish there. I said I saw other teams that had some potential to go below them because, different. I thought Nashville was going to be worse than they were this year. They've had a phenomenal season. Full credit to them. Seriously, good job.
Yeah.
I think Minnesota did a good job avoiding the trap where you break out one season and then you go right back down the next. I think Chicago avoided being the worst.
I think. Hold on before you move off the Wild. I got big red flags for you.
What's the red flags?
I think this is an outlier season. I think they're going to suck next year because those contracts are going to.
Yeah. That cap strain. I'm saying this year they did a good job avoiding that trap where you have one good year and then you suck the next year. Now it's two good years and you suck the next year.
Yeah. I don't think they're going to be very competitive next year, so now granted, a team that we're not talking about in the playoffs, I think Minnesota can do some damage. I think they picked up some good acquisitions. They picked up the Flower as well, who historically has had good seasons in the playoffs. So they are in win now mode, and for good reason, because next year they are going to be falling. But, continue with Chicago.
So yeah, Chicago did a good job avoiding being dead last in that division. They at least were able to piece together some wins and get some momentum here and there. I don't know how Dallas keeps doing it. I've had no faith in them for like 4 years, and they still find a way to compete. I absolutely despise the Stars for that. But I looked at the Coyotes going into it, and how many players were traded for nothing. All right, Beagle, Roussel, Eriksson. Obviously. Not for nothing. You got the washed up corpse of OEL, and then Garland was for the first round pick, and Dylan Guenther's looking very good right about now. Excited for him next year. Gossesbear, borderline nothing. Andrew Ladd was just, we don't want his contract anymore. Look at Vegas when they expanded, and look at how those players were disrespected, thrown away for nothing. We'll give you, we'll give you Jonathan Marchessault if you take Riley Smith off of us in the expansion. Why do I keep hitting that? So it's that. I was expecting that there could be a potential for that because you look at guys that are washed up or we don't want them anymore, take them off our hands, and I'm like, okay, these guys might be angry. They might be playing angry. I think Louis Eriksson had a better season than expected. Not great. I'm also a big Louis fan, so maybe that's a little biased there. Andrew Ladd, even though I'm not his biggest fan, also did a good job battling through injuries and being a good leader on the team. Have to give him credit there. Strawman, good season. Gossesbear, borderline where he was near his peak. Not exactly, but borderline with how well he was
pretty
playing.
Good. I have some stats. I knew you were going to Gossesbear, so I pulled up some stats. Ready for this? So right, Gossesbear had, I don't know actually the exact numbers, but he had 50-plus points this season. Can you tell me who was the next highest points guy for the Philadelphia Flyers this season? Do you know?
Who's on their team left? They got rid of Giroux.
Yeah, so they traded a bunch of players off that team. I've got some defense numbers here. Ready for this? In 79 games played, Ivan Provorov, 31 points.
Oh my God! And they were
That's
just
number
to get rid
one.
of Ghost, and their number one defense.
Travis Sanheim is second with 31 points.
Oh my God!
Oof! It's so almost like when you.
There.
Yeah. Well. Here's even the worst part. Keith Yandel, 77 games played, 19 points. Ready for this one? I do agree with a lot of the smarty pants that plus minus isn't really a good stat, but when it's an exaggerative to one side or the other, that's usually a pretty good indicator of how good they are. Minus 47. I think he took home.
Been allowed to get 1,000 in a row because he was playing like an NHLer.
Yeah, I mean, at the very least, they should have just put him on like forward if you wanted to get your defense.
I've been saying this for years. Why was Yandel not a left wing? All right, he was phenomenal offensively, a liability defensively. Why was he not a left wing? You put him at left wing. He's a consistent top sixer his entire career. I guarantee it with how good he was on the wing. But we're gonna forget that for a second. But I was expecting like a Misfits type season And if they maxed out, they could have competed for that second wild card spot. Didn't say they were going to make it in, but I said they maxed out because we've seen ridiculous shit. My mindset behind ridiculous stuff. Sorry. My mindset behind that was even if they were making a run towards a playoff spot, they would trade off everyone at the deadline anyway for the assets because they would have increased their value. So they wouldn't have made the playoffs regardless. That was my thoughts going into it. But that was their cap, their peak, in my opinion. Now imagine that. But next year, it's a roster full of young players. They'll probably get a couple extra veterans. You do need veterans. But mostly young players. You have Schmaltz coming off a borderline career year. You have Keller coming off a career year. Boyd coming off a career year. All these players that have momentum and continuity together. A head coach that's done wonders for this offense and really getting them to kind of loosen up. Power play still needs some work, but I think it's been better this year than people really gave it credit for. Not great, just better than people give it credit for. I'm being very specific about what I say when I talk, but rookie rosters, young rosters, have higher boom or bust potential because young players can either immediately click or within 10, 20 games start to click and blow up, and then that roster's looking really good right now, or they can take 2, 3, 4 years to develop it case by case. But with the amount of young talent they have, the amount of young talent that was developing and proving, even in limited minutes, Carcone, Michelli, different guys from the Roadrunners that were playing well. If you can get Soderstrom to come up and play well next season, they could be a lot better than people think.
7 picks in the first 2 rounds this year in the draft.
Dylan Gunther, the
Dylan
stud.
Gunther, yeah. And do you have the potential of picking up a game-changing centerman in, hopefully, if you can, fingers crossed, at least stay where you were supposed to pick at number 2. I think Logan Cooley is a great consolation prize for not winning Shane Wright. Mm-hmm. So, yeah, it's a lot better than I think people think. I think this team's going to be a lot more dangerous. And also, if you didn't realize, I think the Coyotes, most of their wins came against teams that were in the Central Division, which is important. You want to win games in your own division, and I mean they had an even tidbit with I'm drawing a blank, Colorado, which Colorado's beating everybody, so it just shows that this team is competitive. To jump topics real quick, because I just pulled up this thing and it blew my mind. So I wanted to go for who had the green jacket for the worst plus minus this season. Mm-hmm. It was Keith Yandel, minus 47. Next closest one is Seth Jones at minus 37. I want to point out, because I just clicked over to the plus side of the plus minuses. I put my hand up and said, who do I think is going to be dangerous in the playoffs? I said the Calgary Flames. I want to read off the top 3 plus minus guys here. Mm-hmm. Number 1, Johnny Gaudreau. Number 2, Elias Lindholm. Number 3, Matthew Tkachuk. 64, 61, 57.
Those video game
that
numbers?
line, that line is insane. I'm going to put my foot down and say that is the best line in hockey. Sorry, not sorry. That is the best line in hockey.
I'm going to counter that with anything with Connor McDavid, because you could probably put Lucas Lesio and Brendan Perlini on a line with McDavid, and you have 2 20-goal scorers and 50-point players.
Yeah, I get McDavid's a great player, and I will still say he is the best player in hockey, but the best line in hockey is in the other team in Alberta. I think that Calgary has the best line in hockey. Also, another one I just want to point out here that I don't know how the heck this came to be this year. Number 6, Alex Goligoski with a plus 41.
Yeah, I guess I was wrong on Goligoski. You put him on a team
he
wants to play for, and he plays well. Wow.
Cale Makar plus 48, just behind him, Alex Goligoski. So Alex Goligoski is as good as Cale Makar confirmed.
And I guess just to briefly sidestep on the plus minus, I think plus minus is very useful for a couple of things. Plus minus, if it's extremely bad, it shows you how you're not pulling your weight whatsoever, or that there's a huge problem with your defense as a whole. guess who's part of that defense? The player that you're talking about, whatever defensive player, they're part of that. If it's ridiculously good, that means even if you're giving up 3 goals a game while you're out there, you're scoring 4, 5, or 6, so you're at the very least doing something right, or you're shutting down. And if it's in the middle, it shows one of a couple of things. You're a lower mediocre player on a very good defensive team, you're an average player on a really good scoring team, or you're a very good defensive player on anywhere between a middling to decent, like probably pretty good team. So there's some useful information there. It's just when it's an end-all, be-all, oh, this defenseman is only good or bad because they're plus-minus, that's when it starts getting ridiculous. And for the final topic, Bill Armstrong.
Yes, reel me back in. Reel me back in. I need a life preserver.
So when he was asked, Jose Romero actually posted this clip and was reporting on it. When he was asked about which players are priority to be re-signed, first off, Galchenyuk and Eriksson, please. Thank you. That's just my little side note. Secondly, he's like, yeah, I actually have a top 10 right now. The draft. Do you get what he's saying? Are we on the same page here, everyone?
Yep. He knows it. We all know it, that the draft is going to be the most important pivotal part of this franchise, and he is not messing around. I just said I remember, I don't remember. That was great word verbiage there. I remember listening to something talking about how he was not even in Arizona for like the last week. He was in Europe watching the IIHF tournament. I don't remember, World Juniors? Is it World Juniors or is it the other one?
I think it's like a junior hockey federation league, right? Where it's like they have the different country teams play together. Yeah,
it's like all the countries playing together. All the biggest names are there. Joaquin Kemmel. I don't know if Shane Wright's there, but I do know that Logan Cooley's there. I know that, all the pieces that he would be looking at drafting from, first to 4 are all mostly playing except for maybe Wright. I don't remember if he is or not. But that was very interesting because I don't remember really hearing of general managers just last week of the season just flying out to go watch, kids play, because that's the type of guy he is. He likes watching, he's a visual guy. He likes to see, how those individuals play on the big stage.
I mean, let's be honest here. Analytics are very, very useful, very good tools, but the eye test is still a thing. You have to also be able to see how a guy plays. I hate when we have the eye test isn't a thing or whatever new age crap. I'm like, no, it's a blend. You need to have multiple different things all working together. And especially if I like this guy's analytics, I like his numbers, I like this stat or this stat, like a Corsi 4, whatever stat you want to use, I think he'll work well in the team. Then you go actually watch how he plays, and you're like, let's say you envision, let's just say it's Cooley, right? Just as an example, let's say you envision him centering between Schmaltz and Keller. You want to move Schmaltz back onto the right wing, and you're like, oh, he would not blend with Keller. He doesn't do this, or he wouldn't compensate for this. It's like very useful to have all of that together in a blend, because then you actually get everything you need. And I wanted to cut in, but I didn't think you went a little bit different with it. I do know of one GM that just kind of flies away at the very end of the season. Just, gone.
Yes.
He's just gone.
Yes, that's right. He went to go look at some prospects with New Jersey and never came back. Another thing I wanted to point out just with the eye test thing, I agree. I think the eye test is really important. I do like advanced stats. I do like them a lot. Like zone entries, I think, is a great advanced stat that came out of, the past 10 years or whatever. But the great one that I really like for eye tests is something I always look for is how fast is a player, right? Does he look faster than his peers? Does he look like he's pushing his stride? And then also, are the hands and the brains up to the same speed as how fast they are? Because a lot of players are fast in the league, in their leagues, but how fast can they think the game, and how fast can those hands actually move with how they're thinking? There's a lot of players that have certain attributes but don't have all of them together. Great example of this is Vinny Hinostroza. Now, I think he's having a pretty good season in Buffalo, but, we saw it here in Arizona. The speed was always there. He was so fast, and he had some pretty good hands, but he just never could think the game at that same speed that he was playing at. He would always end up running into a D-man, running into a stick, whatever, to kill the play. And ultimately, that was his biggest downfall. But it seems like he's doing a lot better in Buffalo. Hopefully, I'm a big fan of Vinny, but, just to use him as an example.
I really thought you were targeting Freddie Sjostrom as soon as you started talking. I'm like, oh yeah, fast, but can he think fast? I really thought you were gonna start slagging off on Freddie Sjostrom because that's the first player that came to mind. But that or Mike York. I know he was an older player when he was here, but he would always when he was here, he would skate fast and then do nothing else.
Obviously, the one I'm thinking about the most is Clayton Keller because he was skating fast and then went into the boards. So.
Oh my God.
That's a joke. That's a joke. I'm
Canceled.
Sorry, Keller.
Canceled.
I'm sorry.
Not a real Coyotes fan confirmed. You Canadian lover, you.
Oh yes, you're right. That's why I picked both the Canadians to be in the Stanley Cup Finals because I'm the biggest Canadian homer on the internet. No, I'm not.
Is there any other miscellaneous Coyote stuff you want to talk about that I missed? Because there's a lot of little things that I feel like you'll pick up on that I don't notice. One great thing was the unique play you brought up in our last podcast when he went out there and got 3 consecutive hits on the different puck carriers and really generated some momentum. Boko Amama had a pretty similar shift in that game against Nashville. Any little things you want to point out? Anything you're going to focus on in the draft? I mean, it wasn't you, but someone pointed out that nice person wearing the white kachina that had "right" on it, crossed it out, and then added "Cooley" beneath it. So, is there any little things you're thinking about? You noticed?
So, biggest things that I'm thinking about is how much better McBain has looked in this final stint of hockey. When he first came in, he did not look as good as Nathan Smith. But also he was nursing a leg injury, so that could be the case. But these final games, McBain has looked really good. I'm very impressed with how he's played defensively and offensively. So just to give some background, I'm the type of person, I always focus on the defensive end of the game. It's something that a lot of people don't really notice, to be honest. Perfect example of this is I hear people complain about Nick Hjalmarsson on the Coyotes, and he was a gem.
Oh my God, he was so good. He was
so good.
Shutdown defenseman.
And just watching McBain, it puts a smile on my face when I see. So the biggest downfall to centermen that I notice is what they do when a puck misses the net. So a lot of centermen, they play high, right? So you have your 2 D-man, and then you have your centerman usually kind of in the middle, or a lot of teams will put him in front of the net. Depends on how close or far away you want him. There was a play during that Predators games that put the biggest smile on my face was he did the opposite of what I expected him to, because so many people try to chase the puck when let's say your player shoots at the net and misses, and it hits the backboard and then starts to rim around the side. He didn't go chasing, trying to cut off the play at the boards, because a lot of times it's a dangerous 50-50 play, right? You get it, great. You're still in the zone. Everything's fine. You miss, there's 2, 3, maybe even 3 players going back for a 2-on-2 or a 2-on-3. And instead of chasing towards the boards, he immediately... It was very impressive. He cut his skates and just started immediately skating backwards before the play, before a Predator had even gotten the puck. That's impressive to me. That's a guy who understands the defensive side of the game really well. That's somebody who's not back checking. He's going to be turned around and, skating backwards with the play, which is really, really important. So I would say McBain has really impressed me. Nathan Smith has gotten a little quiet. I think he got the welcome to the big league crowd. I think in that final game as well, he ended up getting knocked out I can't remember who it was. It was McBaron or some 47 for the Predators. I think it was his number. Big guy, like 6'6". Ended up going in for a kind of a shoulder shove into Nathan Smith, almost like a reverse Forsberg, where puck's coming into your feet and you give the guy who's coming in to attack you the shoulder. He knocked out Smith before he even hit the ice. I was watching that play. When people get knocked out, they kind of go limp and go backwards. And yeah, he was knocked out before he even hit the ice. So hopefully he's okay. He did come back and play and have a few shifts a few minutes later. So, it didn't look like anything serious, but he has been getting the welcome to the big league treatment very hard these last couple of games. There was another one, too, where he got hip checked pretty hard by, I think it was a St. Louis player. So, but yeah, overall, I like the kids. I like where we're heading. I think everything is going according to plan. And, now this is where our playoffs start. After game 82, this is our playoffs right here. May 10th is going to be the
draft
lottery.
Yep,
the lottery. So we'll get to witness the Coyotes fall to number 4 and watch some top 6 or original 6 team take 1, 2, and 3, because that's how it happens every year. Fun fact: it was Luke Lipinski, and it was on the old podcast that he used to do with Craig Morgan called the Natty Hattie. He had a great stat about the Coyotes that I have not heard really anybody talk about. I'm going to butcher this, and so I don't know the exact numbers. I know it's between 5 and 6. Since the Coyotes have moved to Arizona, so that was 1996, the Coyotes have never drafted in position 1 or 2. There's only 5 or 6 other teams that have never drafted at 1 or 2 since 1996. One of them's the Coyotes, the other's the Vegas Golden Knights. I just want to point that out there. That is how bad the lottery luck has been for the Coyotes. They have never drafted 1 or 2 since 1996.
Now,
that is insane.
Now, what did I say about going into Game 5 for the Suns when the threes weren't dropping? What better time than in Game 5 at home? What better time for the draft lottery to finally go our way than here in this current rebuild? And it would also still be hilarious because the odds are not that much more in Montreal's favor to get number 1 overall. It's decent amount. I think it's like 5% or 6%, but it's not that much higher. We still could pick first overall. So what better time would it be than at the draft in Montreal for the poverty organization that's going to be playing in a college rink to be able to get that franchise generational type player? All I'm saying is I do not want to buy a Quebec jersey. I did a little poll to see what happens if the Coyotes win the draft lottery, what my Twitter audience wants me to do, and then what happens if they pick below number 3. You just said number 4, that's why it reminded me of it. If they pick below number 3, I have to buy a Quebec jersey. I think it was I have to get a masked coyote, peyote head, whatever you want to call it, tattoo if they do pick first overall. So it's probably going to be going right here because we're getting that first overall pick. And if we're not, I have to buy a Nordiques jersey. I'm not doing that. I refuse. I will not buy a Quebec Nordiques jersey. I will this team to get the first overall selection. I will make sure this team gets Shane Wright. It's the last thing I do. All right? If I got to go play a pickup game and take his legs out from under him so he drops to 2 or 3, we are getting Shane Wright.
Hopefully. I don't know if we have much else to talk about after that one. That was our Coyotes segment, which doubled the elapsed time of all the other segments because we are the biggest Coyotes homers on this channel here. And so stop yelling at my team. I'm just gonna end that. I think that's what we got to end with. Every episode It's going to be stop yelling at my team, Canadians.
I know, no, I got a better one, all right? Every single time we end an episode, it's just this poverty organization is playing in a college arena and not in Quebec.
Yep.
And just
Yep.
every chance we get, put that home because it seems to get under a lot of people's skin and it's funny.
Yep. It is. I don't understand how people don't recognize. Don't understand it. Don't understand it. ASU moves to Division I hockey. All the minor leagues move to Division I hockey. There is plenty of great prospects coming out of Arizona, but yet nobody think the mantra is that Arizona is not a true hockey state, even though that is not the case. And guess what? This is where you need to find more hockey players. If you're the NHL, you need to find more hockey players. Just like I made the analogy or the quoting, I guess, from last episode. When baseball went to Japan, what happened? More Japanese baseball players came into the league. That is only good for your game. Leaving Arizona is a awful idea.
All I can say is we should start having a little fact sheet just for the copium where we're playing in a college arena instead of Quebec. Jack McBain picked Arizona over the state of hockey, and Toronto's best player and their best prospect, excuse me, are all
Yep.
Arizona players. So, cope.
Yep. Anyways, that's it for us for this episode. Like I said at the beginning of the episode, we are a small channel here.
We're losers.
And,
only 10 subscribers. Come on now. Gotta beat
10
those
subscribers.
numbers up.
So give us a like, a follow, or a subscription on whatever platform you're listening to us on, whether that's YouTube or any of the other audio podcast locations. Yeah, that's it. This is another successful episode. Episode 6, I believe. Not going crazy, right? Episode 6.
Episode 6. We've done it for a month and a half.
And go Suns.